I'm here with Hans von Spakovsky, Senior Legal Fellow, Heritage Foundation, one of the great experts on voting in this country. Hans, their bill does not talk about the registration and voting of citizens. It talks about individuals, which opens the door wide to illegal aliens, as do these lists, where you're not actually allowed to really fix these lists. And as people vote under this legislation, as I understand it, for instance, an election judge in a precinct really is not free to challenge somebody voting because they can be criminally charged. Moreover, as I understand it, you don't have to vote in your own precinct. You can vote in another precinct if you choose to do that. They want to register 16 and 17-year-olds who would actually be able to vote, given the fact that there's no serious ability to challenge their votes or to prevent them from voting. Is that correct?
Yeah, unfortunately, that is correct. Those are all provisions in this bill that would make it, frankly, very easy for people who aren't actually eligible to vote to actually vote and get away with it.
Felons who haven't even finished their terms, they would have the right to vote. Mail-in voting would be mandatory in every state, and the counting can take up to 10 days under this federal law, so the outcome would be delayed for 10 days.
Right.
And there's other things in here, too, but they set up a special commission, which they say is intended to promote and defend democratic institutions. And this commission has members placed on it who have the power to force judges who have ruled on this statute or ruled on voting under this statute, force them to come to Washington, D.C., and explain themselves. So you would actually have judges reporting to a commission, and you would have individuals who might raise constitutional questions about this law or issues related to elections under this law, and they could only come to one place to bring their lawsuit, a district court in Washington, D.C., and most of these claims would all be joined together. This entire thing, Hans, is set up for the Democrat Party. It undermines the franchise, and then when you watch Democrats say that this is intended to promote voting, and anyone who opposes it opposes minorities from voting? How in any way does this prevent minorities from voting? That is, objecting to a law like this that would destroy the franchise across the board. Does it have anything to do with minorities?
No, it doesn't at all. In fact, it will this bill, if passed, will disenfranchise all voters, including minority voters. I mean, look, just one quick example out of what you were just talking about. Look, it has been a tradition in America for forever that you are supposed to vote in the precinct to which you've been assigned. There's a good reason for that. First, that way officials know how many ballots should be in each precinct. Because if you don't know how many people are going to show up, you may run out of ballots and people may not be able to vote. Second, it ensures that you get the ballot that allows you to vote for everybody you're entitled to vote for, not just nationally, but folks who are running for state and local offices. This bill would require states to allow people to vote outside of their assigned precinct, which means that if you go to a precinct on the other side of a large county where you live, well, yeah, you may be able to vote for president, you may be able to vote for the U.S. senators, but you won't be qualified to vote perhaps for a member of Congress or state legislators or members of the city council. So you are, in effect, giving voters the ability to disenfranchise themselves because they may not realize that. That's why this is just such a bad bill. I mean, it's not just many parts of it are unconstitutional. It's just bad and reckless policy.
And I do want to remind the audience that the framers of the Constitution would have vehemently opposed this. They did not believe in all the power going to Washington, D.C. If they did, they would have said so. But instead, there are two provisions, and especially Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, that leaves it to state legislatures specifically to write election laws, including as it applies to the selection of a president and vice president of the United States. This would effectively take that provision of the Constitution, Hans, and eliminate it. And
look, the reason for that, Mark, as you well know, is they were afraid that if Congress could set out all the rules for federal elections, then what would they do? Well, they would put in rules and laws that would favor them as incumbents and help them retain power in Congress. And that's why I think the framers distributed the power and authority to run federal elections down between the federal government and the states. And this bill just totally overrides that.